Welcome back, Honors. All right. So the next couple days are going to be ridiculous, right? So basically, this flip is going to be a little bit longer than normal, and it's mostly for G, and there are a couple of elements for E in there as well, right? So as E has already found out, because we talked about it today in class, this is the section that y'all need to listen to when it comes to the founding myth of Rome, and anything in class that I told you need to make sure that you're caught up on, because we're all going to try and start on Thursday at the exact same spot, because it'll make everybody's lives a little bit easier. And then also, just a heads up, your next map quiz is going to be on Friday, all right? And I know some of you are going to be like, but that's Boo-Boo Day. And yes, you're correct, but we're still going to do it, all right? So, because we just got to get this thing banged out, all right? Now, anyway, here is the important stuff, all right? So, let's go ahead and discuss the founding myth of Rome. This way, I don't have to stand up in front of you and do it, and we can do this, and you can listen to it over and over and over and over and over again, all right? So, let's go ahead and discuss how Rome, according to myth, was founded. Now, according to myth, I've said myth like 6 times, but according to this legend, if you will, 2 twin boys were born to a Vestal virgin, right? So a Vestal virgin, of course, is someone who dedicates their life to the Roman religion, right? And her name is Rhea, right? R-H-E-A. Now, here's the thing of why she is a Vestal virgin and why she was actually put in this area. So her father was Numitor, N-U-M-I-T-O-R, right? You do not need to write all these details down, but just to help you out a little bit, right? So Numitor is her father, who is the king of this small kingdom that is not Rome itself. It's a Latin kingdom, right? So in this Latin kingdom, Numitor is the king, and then, oh God, however you say his name, Amulius, it's like A-U-M, Amulius, all right? Amulius is Numitor's brother. So we have 2 people leading over this Latin kingdom. We have Numitor, Amulius. Numitor is the king of the government, while Amulius is the king of the treasury. But Amulius has plans, right? Amulius is like, but I really, really want to be in charge of this entire kingdom, and I do not want to share power with my brother, which becomes a very, very popular Roman theme as time goes on. So he decides, after hearing a prophecy, that he is going to be dethroned by someone very close to him and someone in his family. He has a fight with his brother, Numitor, Rhea's father, his niece, right? And he actually destroys him and dethrones Numitor in the process and becomes the new leader of this kingdom. And he rules like a tyrant. He's an absolute jerk, right? Amulius is not a nice guy. And he banishes Rhea to become a Vestal virgin, right? And so that way he believes, oh, if I keep her over there, then there will be no way that children will be born to her that will eventually dethrone me as well, right? Because he's trying to knock out all these relatives that could actually take his power away from him. Amulius is a jerk, right? So Amulius banishes Rhea away, but joke's on you, Amulius, because there is somebody that is absolutely obsessed and in love with Rhea, and his name is Mars, right? The god of war and farming in Rome. His Greek counterpart is Ares, right? But Mars falls in love with Rhea and then appears to her, and they actually form a relationship, and she gets pregnant with 2 twin boys, right? And they are born to this Vestal virgin, and their names are Romulus and Remus. And when they are born, they are of perfect weight and perfect size and genetically superior in wildly different ways. And so Amulius hears this, and he tells a servant to go kill these 2 babies, right? But the servant can't do it. So he takes the 2 babies in the middle of the night, puts them in a basket, and he puts them on the bank of the Tiber River, knowing that the Tiber River, which runs through T-I-B-E-R, which runs past Rome and is a main thoroughfare throughout Italy, right? He knows that the river will rise and take the basket and wash it away. That way he doesn't have to do it, right? And then the basket does get washed away. A little bit of a flood shows up and the basket gets washed downstream, right? And the plan in his mind is like the animals will kill these babies and I won't have to do it, or they'll drown, right? So, but the babies get washed up on top of a hill known as Palatine Hill, the future site of where the castle for the emperors will be built in Rome, right? So they are saved on this place called Palatine Hill by another god called Tiberinus, right? And Tiberinus is like the god of the Tiber River, the flooding, as well as the controller of the weather that associates itself with the river, right? He saves them also by sending them a guide, right? He sends them Lupa, right? Lupa, the Latin word for female wolf, right? Her actual name is like Lupercal, all right? So now Lupa saves them, along with a woodpecker. A woodpecker feeds them and stuff too. But she saves them and nurses them. And then at one point, the babies have to be able to grow. But as they're growing, they are, again, look, genetically superior, sitting up at an early age, feeding off of this wolf. But then a shepherd comes along, and his name is Faustulus, right? And Faustulus notices this wolf nursing these children, and he's like, I can't do this. This wolf is going to kill these babies. So he chases Lupo away, and he takes the babies, and he takes them home, and they raise them as their own, him and his wife, right? So Faustulus raised Romulus and Remus as two daring, dashing, handsome, genetically superior young men that were shepherds and raised as shepherds, right? And they have huge careers. They are like very, 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 very strong, and they are athletic, and they are like the varsity guy, and they are chasing away brigands, and they are running down people that are doing wrong. They're like borderline vigilantes, right? And then Amulius is still king of this kingdom, and he sees them, and he's like, oh, dang, two twins around that age? Those are my nephews. I should probably keep my eye on them, right? After finding out, though, that the boys actually then find out that they are the grandsons of the rightful king, Numitor, right? Numitor. Now, and Numitor, who is still alive at the time, says to them, you are my grandsons, and you have to help me take this kingdom back, right? And so, to try and dispel this, Amulius arrests Remus and puts him inside of a prison, and then Romulus with Numitor lead an entire huge military fight, destroy Amulius, dethrone him, release Remus, and hand rule back over to their grandfather. And their grandfather says, it's time for you to go out and start your own kingdom, right? You two are too great for this small area. And so they venture out into the wilderness to start their own kingdom. And when they venture out, what do they come to yet again? But 7, this is an important detail, 7 different hills at the base of the Tiber River, right? So one of them is Palatine Hill, the hill that they were washed upon, right? And Romulus is like, we should put our settlement on top of that hill, Palatine Hill, right? That's the good one. And then Remus, on the other hand, says, no, we should put our settlement on that hill, Capitoline Hill. That's the better one, all right? And then they get into an argument. Well, to settle this argument, they have a competition of augury, all right? And augury is where you actually go and you watch for birds as a sign from the gods. So they decide to go watch for birds. And Remus says, look, there are 7 birds over my hill, right over Capitoline Hill, so that is where we should settle. And then Romulus says, oh, no, look over there. 12 birds over mine. So they decide to settle on Palatine Hill, and then they can't decide how it will be governed. Remus is expounding one type of government that has elements of democracy and republic and stuff like that. And then Romulus says, no, this should be a monarchy, and I should be this place's kingdom, right? And then they get into a fight, and then Romulus stabs Remus and kills his own brother and becomes the first rightful king of Rome, right? So, and he names the kingdom after himself. He names it Rome, as in Romulus, right? That is the founding myth of Rome, right? You just need to know the story. You do not need to write down every single detail. The reason why I wanted to record this is because I saw in our E-classes, we were like, oh, what was their names? All right, so that way you can just know it and you can just watch it a bunch of times. So 2 twin boys born of Mars are going to be the ones that found Rome. Now, looking at it historically, we know that's not necessarily true, right? The real founders of Rome were these people called the Latins, right? They were the first people to actually settle in the area nearby Rome, right? So they would build these really janky, ugly-looking houses, these early settlements of sticks and mud, and they had early farming techniques, but they had no written language, and the only thing they really had was their language, right? Their Latin language, which is going to hang on with the Romans throughout their entire history, right? But here's the thing. One small group of Latins decided to break away from the larger Latin settlement, and they wanted to go found a new kingdom, and they called this new kingdom Rome, right? So the original settlers of Rome were actually these people known as the Latins. So Rome gets one part of their culture from these people known as the Latins, right? So who are the original founders of Rome? The Latins, right? Now, was Romulus probably at one point one of their kings? Probably, right? Romulus probably was a king at one point, and maybe he did have a twin brother. We don't really necessarily know, but we do know that these are the actual founders of Rome. I really hope that secretly, that actually all happened, right? I hope that there was 2 twin babies saved by a wolf, but probably not. Now, anyway, so Rome was then founded on a hill overlooking the Tiber River, right? Now, this original settlement is going to grow off of that one hill and then eventually cover all 7 hills in the area because they believed by being at the top of those hills, it would protect their settlement from flooding, all right? Because the Tiber River floods annually just like the Nile does in Egypt, right? Bringing silt and volcanic ash, re-energizing the soil, and making a very, very good area for farming in the Kingdom of Rome, right? So the Tiber River is actually right here. This is when my wife and I went to Rome, and this is during November, during the rainy season, whenever it actually does flood. And as you can see, it's all very, very dirty. It's all chewed up and muddy and stuff. It's full of silt, right? Like, so that's all the stuff off the bottom of the river. That's why it's so like murky and grimy looking. Now, wait, that's my wife doing a handstand. Now, anyway, but nearby, though, okay, so here's the original settlement of Rome. As you can see, there are 7 different hills. Palatine Hill being the one where the royals would live. Capitoline Hill being where the capital and the government emanated out of. And then in the middle of all these hills is this place, the Roman Forum, which is wildly important as well. Go ahead and jot that down. At the base of all the hills, at the very, very center, is the Roman Forum, which at first was like a little swampy, mushy, kind of marshy kind of place because it get flooded all the time, right? But then eventually the Romans are going to build like hills and levees to keep the river back, and they're going to start burying bodies in the Forum at first, but then they decide to build a marketplace on top of it, right? So originally, there's a lot of dead people in the Forum. Now, anyway, whoa, reel it back. All right, so there we go. So as Rome is growing, and it's covering these 7 hills, and it's at the base of the Tiber River, and they're figuring their farming out, and they're growing, and they're speaking Latin, and they don't have a written language yet, and they're doing their thing and doing as their best they can. Nearby, there are these other people known as the Etruscans, right? Now, the Etruscans were much stronger and more powerful than the Romans were because they had traded with the Greeks at one point. Oh, by the way, this is my wife doing a handstand on, what hill is that? So that's on Esquiline Hill. She's on Esquiline Hill doing a handstand. That's the sideways one. Now, anyway, but I've actually been to Rome, and it is gorgeous. If you ever get a chance, you should definitely go. We're going to look at pictures from my trip there at one point so you can see like the Forum and the way it looks and stuff like that. So, the Etruscans, though. So we've already got one culture that's affecting the Romans, the Latins, right? And then the next up, we've got the Etruscans, right? The Etruscans are actually going to create city-states to the north of Rome, okay? And they're going to grow very, very fast, all right? They grow very, very fast because they originally were a stronger kingdom already that started on the east coast of Rome, or of Italy, excuse me. So you should never ever say the geography of Italy whenever you're talking about, whenever you're talking about the geography of Rome, you should never actually just say the geography of Rome. You should say the geography of Italy all the time because Rome got so large at one point that you can't say the geography of Rome because it's everywhere, right? It's in parts of France and the UK and Germany and all these other different places. So you have to say the geography of Italy, right? So speaking of the geography of Italy, the Etruscans settled on the eastern coast of Italy, right? They created like several different city-states, but then decided to move their kingdom and created several city-states to the north of Rome. Now here's the thing. These are the Etruscans. That is a fresco painting done by the Etruscans. These are olives. That is a flute. These are togas. That is a laurel wreath. These people look like Greeks. All right, well, that's just the thing. The Etruscans had traded with the Greeks and shared their culture. Cultural diffusion! It's very, very important. All right, so the Greeks had actually traded with the Etruscans so much that they adopted a lot of different cultural traits of the Greeks, and then they are going to show up and they are going to take over Rome from 753 to 509 BC. So the Etruscans come in and take over little fledgling Rome, right? But again, remember, what happens? Cultural diffusion. Whenever you take anybody over through war and trade, cultures will spread, right? So that is how Rome adopted all of their Greek characteristics of architecture, religion, writing, all these different other types of like facets, diet, how to trade, how to build boats, how to do all these different things, right? It was actually because the Etruscans took them over from 753 to 509 BC. And that was actually when Rome was being led by a series of kings, right? This is the kingdom period of Rome. Because something you need to know real quick about Rome itself, there are 3 time periods in Rome. Kingdom, Republic, Empire, all right? K-R-E. Here's the best way to remember this, and Mr. Wooderson hates this with a fiery passion, but the Kyle ruins everything. Kingdom, Republic, Empire, all right? So anyway, now, during the kingdom period, they're being ruled over by the Etruscans and a series of different kings, right? And from 753 to 509 BC, they are ruled by the Etruscans. And the Romans are eventually going to expel the Etruscans due to a big story involving the Sabine women and a woman named Lucretia and like a lot of other stuff that I don't want to get into right now. But the Romans are going to expel the Etruscans and kick them out in about 506, 509 BC, right? Now, here's the thing, though. Rome was only able to do this because of the Etruscans, right? Because even though most things they did were Etruscan, they now created a system in which they are actually considered Romans, right? So you need to actually jot this down. Rome is a combination of 3 different cultures, right? Rome is a mixture of the Latins, the Etruscans, and the Greeks, right? It's kind of like the legs that Rome stands on. Get it? Latins, Etruscans, Greeks. The legs of Roman culture are from the Latins, the Etruscans, and the Greeks. Make sure you have that as well. Some of you are like, oh, that's so long. You get 48 hours to do it. Calm down. Now, anyway, so then Rome is going to, after they expel the Etruscans, they're going to decide to go out and start conquesting other parts of Italy, right? Because from expelling the Etruscans and pushing them out, they were like, wow, we're kind of arrogant and cocky. We have a military now, and we're doing stuff, and we know how to wield bronze and also iron after that, and we can create a military, and we can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So they decide to go out and take over all of Italy, right? So Rome is going to fight several small wars with the other tribes that exist in Italy. Because remember, Italy was extremely farmable, was defensible from the coastline because of all the cliffs and stuff. It had annual floods, re-energized soil, volcanic ash in the dirt, all the stuff. It was a great place to settle, so it's not like the Romans were the only ones there. But the Romans decide to become the only ones there, right? So they decide to go out and start taking over the entire area of Italy, right? Now, here's something crazy that goes down. When this occurs, they start adopting a new thing called a dictator, right? So, and the most mythical dictator out of all of them is a man by the name of Cincinnatus. And I know right now, Ellie's like, oh, Cincinnatus, that's like Cincinnati, Ohio. Yes, it is. That's what the city itself of Cincinnati, Ohio is actually named after Cincinnatus, right? And, well, really, really quick, so Cincinnatus is actually named after Cincinnati, Ohio, okay? And Cincinnatus would be elected to rule over Rome during a time of war. He was actually a farmer at one point, right? And he's like sitting there chilling, and he's just actually minding his own business. And they had to go take over these people known as the Aequi, right? The Aequi were a neighboring territory, tribe that was giving them a lot of trouble, and they were having a lot of difficulties taking over. And so they go up to Cincinnatus while he's farming, and he's like, as you can see, there's a plow behind him, and they tell him, Cincinnatus, we need your help. Can you please come help us? Be our dictator and lead us to victory, right? And Cincinnatus wipes the sweat off of his brow, flicks it out, and he goes, I will help you. And he goes and he helps them lead, and he fights off the Aequi, and he wins that war, and he helps take over a huge chunk of Italy. And afterwards, he retires, and he goes back to farming again. So this set up a tradition in Rome that a dictator would be brought in during a time of war always, right? And when that war was over, that dictator was supposed to retire, right? So, and he's supposed to go back to minding his own business. So we will explain in class on Thursday what this thing in his hand is, and again, how the Etruscans have major effects on them as a whole in the culture, all right? So we are going to wrap all this up real quick, and then we're going to talk about all these things on Thursday, and also the Gallic invasions, right? So we're basically talking about like little fledgling kingdom Rome doing their thing, and they're going to get smacked in the mouth like real quick, all right? So anyway, but that is the establishment of Rome. Hope you guys have a great evening. I'll see you guys later. Bye.